All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We're very happy, although it's probably afternoon by now. We're very happy that you're here. And as Betty said, I have a background in public health and I've done a whole kind of variety of things over the years. In my current role, I mostly serve in a communications role, focused on internal communications and then external for publications. One of my roles here is as a social media manager. So I have many years of helping scientists and researchers to create their professional social profiles, their online presence, posting materials, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned over the years. And I'm very excited to talk to you today about this particular important part of your life and as you go forward and transition into the workforce. So Dannell is going to talk to us first.
Great, thanks, Lori. So I thought we'd go ahead and start with just an overview of the workshop today. So we have 4 different content areas. First, we're going to cover the basics as to why social media is important as a young professional moving into the workforce. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about how your personal social media presence can affect your career and strategies to make it work for you, not against you. Third, we're going to talk about your professional social media and how it can help or hurt you. And then finally, we're going to cover some strategies that you can leverage social media to enhance your professional goals. And a little bit of the background, we're just going to do presentations, and then Lori's going to follow up with some interesting ways to interact, and we'll have it more interactive towards the end. So while we hope that this workshop is informative, we really want you to pay special attention to key takeaways at the end of each of those 4 sections. And then at the end of the workshop, we have proposed action items that can help get this research, get this information into action and get it working for you. So that's a way to kind of boil it down, a lot of content, and make it manageable to move forward. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Social media can help to develop lasting impressions of a person, whether that is a positive or a negative impression. We live in a digital society with social media affecting our perception of others. Studies have found that with a limited amount of information, people quickly form opinions about others based solely on their social media profile. During in-person meetings, we can judge nonverbal communication, such as body language or facial expressions. Social media profiles contain much less information, and we still make those snap judgments about someone. Studies have found that negative social media content was given more consideration than positive content when forming an opinion about someone. So with this in mind, if an employer views your social media presence or profile and sees negative content, that may weigh heavily in their minds as they're forming that initial opinion and impression of you. So despite having a glowing resume or a CV and references, this may affect whether or not you get that job offer. Social media is growing in importance to employers. In fact, 70% of the US hiring managers say that they use social media to source, research, and screen job candidates. So approximately 60% feel that reviewing applicants' social media profiles should be standard practice for hiring managers. We know that employers are looking to social media to guide their hiring decisions. So what content is causing them to not make those offers? While some of the reasons make sense, and we can see the link to employment, others are more vague, or they're vaguer, and we might not think about it. For instance, 22% of US hiring managers cited using inappropriate social media usernames as a reason why they were turned off a candidate's profile. And Lori's going to talk a little bit more about username in a little bit. Approximately 27% cited poor communication skills, and 17% cited posting too infrequently as reasons for concern. Inappropriate content, including provocative pictures, videos, and posts, were among the highest areas of concern for hiring managers, similar to drug and alcohol content. So let's take a look at these 3 LinkedIn profile pictures. If you were a hiring manager, what assumptions would you make about these candidates? Do you think this would impact your hiring decision? What if their resumes were perfect for the position you were hiring for? Would these LinkedIn profiles outweigh that or cause you to take pause? Did anyone want to tell me what they think of these pictures when they see it?
All serious?
Did you say unserious?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts on what, if you saw these pictures as a hiring manager, what you'd think about someone?
I think you need the specific kind of like pictures to put on LinkedIn, like professional one.
Okay. So you don't think these look very professional then?
No, I mean, like if the profile is okay, but then I'm going to only dig deeper if I'm really interested, and then probably ask during the interview why you put this kind of picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys so much for that. So we're seeing that on the surface, we're making those snap impressions as a hiring manager, that these come off as kind of unserious or not very professional. So if someone doesn't know you and they're just looking at that snap impression, it might not be really favorable in your behalf. So later in this workshop, Lori's going to provide some practical suggestions to select just the right picture for LinkedIn and other social platforms that will help you build your professional network and not to foster these initial snap negative impressions. So there are personal and professional reasons for social networking, and having the ability to connect with professionals via social media is seen as a valuable skill. Some professionals try to create distinction between their professional and personal lives by having different accounts on the same social platforms. That said, social media is fostering an environment where those lines between personal and professional lives are blurring, and it may be difficult to keep separate accounts separate. For instance, do you think your friends from work will only look at your professional accounts? What about your boss or your clients or your students? You need to be cognizant that professional contacts may very well be viewing your personal content. So we know the hiring managers are paying attention to our social media. So what can you do now as graduate students and young professionals to set yourself up for success as you prepare to enter the job market? We suggest creating a cohesive online identity by approaching both professional and personal social media with consistency and awareness of who may see your content. Today, we're going to share some strategies and approaches for you to consider as you do this. Okay, so we're just coming up to the end to our first chunk of content here. So this is our key takeaway from our first section. Social media content, both personal and professional, is important to your career. Let's boil it all down. And this is the nugget that we need to take away from that first section of content. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into our next section. And we're going to talk about your personal social media accounts and how to make sure that they do not harm your future career paths. So if you have a personal social media presence, chances are high that your future potential employer will find your accounts and screen them for red flags. Social media screening often occurs prior to a job offer, and HR or the hiring manager will search candidates out to view content. Typical social media channels that are screened are Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. LinkedIn is viewed as a secondary resume, while other platforms are seen as ways to get to know the candidate as a person and identify potential red flags. As mentioned earlier, they are looking for content that raises alarms, such as illegal activity, offensive comments, sexually explicit material, confidential information, and violent or aggressive behavior. Before applying for any job, you should conduct an audit of your personal and professional social media accounts. So here are some things to look for or consider for your personal and professional social media accounts when you're conducting an audit. Instagram is highly visual, so make sure the images you share are non-inflammatory or offensive. And this goes for the materials you upload, your personal materials, and also the content you share with or interact with from other creators. While you can set your Twitter profile and other social platforms to private and avoid your potential employer viewing this content, it also reduces an opportunity to make a favorable impression on them if you use the platform in a professional manner. Like Twitter, you can set your Facebook profile account to private. That said, you need to monitor how others interact with your account. This includes images that you're tagged in, comments under your post, and things others post to your wall. These are not always kept private. Like Instagram, content on TikTok can help your potential employer get to know you, but only if it's appropriate. So there are 3 key items to keep in your mind when you're thinking about passing a personal social media screen from an HR hiring manager. Number 1, don't delete your accounts. You might be tempted to race home and delete all of your personal social media accounts. However, take a pause before you do that. 1 in 5 employers will not call a candidate without an online presence. Employers suggest that this could indicate a person's trying to hide something. So also, even if you delete your social media profile, it doesn't mean the content's gone. It may be cached somewhere and searchable through Google. Your best bet is to keep your social media accounts, but ensure they're clean, appropriate, and up to date. Tip number 2 for passing a personal social media screen: use social media to your benefit. Despite what we're sharing today so far, most employers are checking out your social media to support your qualifications and application to their organization. So use it to your advantage. Share the types of content that highlight your passions and knowledge, professionalism, and growth potential. You know that they're going to be poking around, so use it to your advantage and make it work for you. And the final tip before passing a personal social media screen: Google yourself. Most employers will start their online search by going to Google. Know what they're going to see by opening up an incognito window and searching yourself every month or so. And Lori's going to actually show you how to open up this incognito window to do the search. This can help you get a jump start on whatever they're going to find, so you'll have time to get ahead of anything negative. Setting up a Google alert for yourself helps you learn quickly if anything new pops up. So what should you post or not post to keep your online presence clean and able to pass a social media screen? First, avoid posting anything potentially offensive. Ask yourself, would you post that comment or image in your office at work? If the answer is no, remove it from your public profile. Second, ask yourself what the purpose of the post is. Is it intended or appropriate for your personal or professional social media account? Third, keep it simple. If your profile is public, less can be more. And finally, never complain about a current or former employer or colleague. This sets off red flags for potential employers. All of this is to say, you can't show the richness of your personality online. Social media gives us a fantastic opportunity to connect with people that we might not otherwise get to. So share your hobbies, fun times with family and friends, and different entertainment types that you enjoy. Just be cognizant that it will most likely be viewed by a potential employer in the future. Ask yourself, will this post help or hurt my future career growth? So it is legal for employers to check out your personal public social media profiles. If you do not want them to view these profiles, make them private. That said, we've also highlighted the importance of having an online presence. So if you do make your accounts private, make sure that you also have a professional profile that is public. So if you do decide to have both personal and professional accounts, accidents occur, such as posting content in the wrong place. You will need to be diligent in maintaining these boundaries, and you should consider what you post, even when it's private, to maintain that cohesive online presence that works for you. So this tweet was sent from StubHub's corporate account in October 2012. These accidental tweets from big brands have caused a lot of news over the years, and more than a couple social media professionals have lost their jobs because of them. On their personal account, this person was sharing content that they most likely did not want their employer to see. So when those lines blurred between personal and professional accounts, their career was impacted. While not everyone is going to be posting in social media for an organization like this, I think this illustrates that just because we think our employers won't see our personal content, there are opportunities for the personal and professional boundaries to blur, and that's when careers can be impacted. So our key takeaways from this second section. First, your social media accounts will be screened by potential employers. 2, employers expect you to have an online presence. And 3, audit your social media to keep it clean and current. And now Lori's going to take up our next section.
All right, we are going to talk some more about specifically building the professional social media presence. And some of these tips, I apologize, I'm a down in the weeds kind of person, but hopefully this will give you an opportunity to really develop some of those tools and things that you need to begin to build this professional social media profile. It's really important at this first step to start thinking about yourself as if you were a product or a brand. What are you about? What are you good at? What do you want to be known for? What is your work about? Your social media profile and accounts should paint a picture of who you are. What's your story about? So, one of the main differences for you on social media as you transition to the workforce from a personal only account is building and developing that network of peers, idols, brands, and services that you will navigate as part of your professional career. One easy place to start building this network, if you haven't done it, is before you even leave campus. Your campus career services can offer help with material development for things like resumes, your LinkedIn profile, any other kind of personal summary statements and things like that that you might need as part of your job searching process, but also as part of your profile development. You were lucky to have gone to WVU because you have an alumni association that is very strong. There are very many people associated with our alumni association that if you connect with them on LinkedIn will help you. And in addition to that, they have a very robust website that if you've not taken a chance to check it out, I would strongly encourage you to do so because there are all kinds of videos on there. There's all kinds of tips and tricks on there. How to dress for an interview, how to participate in an interview. Some of the best connections that I've made have come through my alumni association. Now, these weren't necessarily people I knew while I was on campus, but people that I either connected to on LinkedIn or found through the alumni association website. So I cannot encourage this step enough. Don't underestimate the value of connecting with the people that you've worked with and that you've met on campus as well. Follow the accounts of your mentors and your professors. Follow accounts related to your interests or hobbies or teams or clubs that you were part of when you were here on campus. So next up, the hard part is developing your online profile. So as I mentioned, social media is a way to build your brand. And it's really the way that you're going to curate your story and collect your experiences in a real way so that you become a visible online person that's authentic and genuine. Your social media profile, as Dannell said, is really, it's like the virtual representation of you. And so it helps you engage with people that you might not have encountered in person. And for a lot of us, it's an opportunity because we live in a small state and in a small school. For a lot of us here on campus, this is a great way for you to reach out into the world and have an impact in places that are beyond WVU. So really start to think about your social media presence as the online version of yourself. And that self is able to go out into the world and connect and network and be a part of larger conversations and larger collaborations with other people. So one of the things that's super important, and I think it's a very good place to start, is with this username. You really need to have a professional username. As Dannell mentioned earlier, 22% of employers don't offer jobs to people who have questionable or inappropriate usernames. The other thing that's really important here are the headshots. Dannell pointed out how quickly that impression is made of you as you move forward. So I'm going to give you some really in-depth detail about how to get a professional image together. And then I would also encourage you at this point in the game to really start spending time developing your list, your summary of your best you. And this might include your interests. It might include your work, your coursework that you've done at school. It might be skills that you've acquired while you've been here as a student. And I recommend that everybody have this top 10 list of themselves because it will form the basis of all of the profiles that you will set up, whether that's your personal ones or whether that's your professional ones. This will also help you keep, in my world, we call it on message. And what that really means is that you have a very clear understanding of what the keywords are that describe you, who your peers are, what it is that you're about, and where it is that you're going. And so spend some time to really develop this summary. Think about skills, courses, things you've done, things that interest you, and create. Some of us are a little older, but there used to be a comedian on television, and he would do a top 10 list. And so I always think about the top 10 list as something that's really specific to you. And keep these handy as we go through and create some of these profile components. The other thing is to be really clear about your goal statement or your personal purpose. Have that written out, and this will help you maintain your authenticity and your genuineness as you start to develop your keyword lists and start looking at peers and start looking at jobs. One of the things that I've found, and one of the things that the young people that I talked to ahead of this presentation told me, was that sometimes they really creep once they start looking at some of these other things. So I think starting with these things before you've even gone on to the profile development phase is really to develop that clear messaging, clear statements about who you are, what you want to do, and what it is that you're looking for. All right, so how do you choose the right platform? Because there are so many. And one of the things that as you transition from using the personal attributes, instead of doing something for all of them, I would recommend doing something that's specific for some of them. And so when it comes to professional networks, really the leaders are LinkedIn and Twitter. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, that's really, as Dannell mentioned, that's really a red flag for employers. Twitter, maybe not so much, depending on your industry and what it is that you're doing. But LinkedIn is where you can go to put yourself out there, and Twitter is where you go to learn and connect back to those other people. So both are very valuable, but I wanted to point out, there's not only one, but in the beginning, I really recommend that you start with one to build those resources. And then once you get that online presence and story kind of nailed down a little bit, then it's easier to transition to some of these other platforms. I would also say that being active on various social media platforms means that you have the opportunities to develop it may be more industry knowledge, or maybe network, or discover a next job. So don't underestimate these non-traditional work-related sites. Because in the beginning, you do need to focus on like LinkedIn or Twitter, so that you can build that story. But you also may find that there are things on some of these others that are useful for work. The important thing is, don't try to copy what other people are doing. Really think about like new and innovative ways that you can express yourself in your work. You really want to show the people that follow you what you're passionate about, what you believe in, and then also that's going to help to describe your expertise. So at this point, you may be asking yourself, what do I actually put on this magical profile that you've been talking about when I may not have any work experience? But don't worry. 41% of LinkedIn recruiters say that they consider volunteering on par with full-time paid work experience. And 20% of hiring managers say that they've hired someone because of volunteer experience. So when you're developing these materials and these goal statements, don't overlook things that maybe weren't part of your specific coursework. Think about your hobbies and your interests. Were you able to be a leader in the Lego club, or maybe on the pitch, in a sports setting? Be able to frame those experiences as part of your story, because each piece of those things tells who you are. So focus on volunteer work, activities on campus related to your coursework, and also any kind of extracurricular things that you might have done. Because it's good to go beyond that schoolwork. It tells people something unique and personal about you, and it kind of rounds you out as a human being, and reveals your passions and what you care about. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about building the LinkedIn profile, since we've identified that as being the most important one. Now, I did recently read that the average amount of time that a recruiter uses to review employment materials, whether they're online or in paper, is 6 seconds. So it is very crucial to use all of the tools that any of these platforms give you to the fullest extent. I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, but most of the things that I'm talking about are going to apply across the array of any of the social media platforms. And so each of the platforms are going to have this area at the top of the profiles that you can use to really expand your message and tell your story. So I'm using this example from my friend May, who is a marketer, and she focuses on using data to help brands make decisions. And so at the top here, you'll see that instead of saying what her job title was, she's used this as an opportunity to really summarize and create a statement about who she is and what she's good at. And so you can use this summary area like that to begin to tell the story about that. She's connected to her WVU Alumni Association. I highly encourage you to do that. Use the tools that are built into LinkedIn and these other tools to really grow your network. The other thing that I would really encourage you to do is I became friends with May because I heard her speak at an Integrate conference several years ago, and I reached out to her on LinkedIn. And I started a conversation with her. I asked her a question about something that I had seen her talk about in her presentation. And now when she comes to Integrate in Morgantown from San Francisco, where she lives, she's a friend of mine now. So I'd really encourage you to, follow up with this network, really engage with this network, really use it as an opportunity to put yourself out there and make connections and start conversations. One of the other things that you can do here is peep in on your idols, peep in on the people who mean a lot to you in whatever field that you're in, and look and see who they follow and follow those same brands. You can also look at their profiles and develop a keyword array that's related to your industry. Use LinkedIn to develop your tools, but also use it as kind of an opportunity to really investigate and dig into some of those other people. In the end, you need all of this to make sense for you, and you don't want to necessarily copy exactly what somebody else has done, but looking at some of these profiles will really help you shape that idea of what you need to be doing and where you need to be out there. And I would highly encourage you to use every section of the profile that's available. In LinkedIn, you have your photo, you have your headline, your summary, your education experience, and your volunteer and internship. You also have the opportunity to add skills and experience and other endorsements and things like that. And so I really encourage you not to leave any real estate on the table. These are all ways that you can leverage yourself. And I did want to point out here too, I actually looked really hard to find a banner image that really tied the profile picture and the banner itself to May's profile. And you can see here, she's doing what she loves. She's talking about data here, I'm going to guess. But you can see her here, she's engaging and she's being able to show a part of her personality that is probably down there underneath of her, summary or education. It says public speaker, But this is a way that you can show that particular skill or that particular side of yourself without saying it specifically. All right, so choosing the right LinkedIn profile photo is crucial. As we've said many times before, you've got just a few seconds to capture attention, and you really want to stay away from things that might create a negative an impression. And you can actively work to create a positive one. So hopefully I'll have some tips here that will help you. So I recommend doing something here that might set you apart, but you also want to avoid some of these things. And so we've talked about maybe some inappropriate content where related to alcohol or other things like that. Don't use anything blurry or screen grabbed. Always try to use the original source of the photo. Don't use something that's stretched or unprofessional. One of my pet peeves is when you can't see the whole face. And so this person, they may be a photographer and they may have a great photography business, but you really want to be able to see the subject's face. You really want to see a well-lit, in focus, up close profile picture. You want to make sure there aren't other people in the pictures. You don't want to crop a section out of the pictures, and don't use like overly dark or stylized photos, or my own personal negative, don't use filters. Okay, really have a great photo here of your face, not some random thing that's not a person. Make sure that you frame the picture well. You're not too far away or too close when you take the picture. You might also want to think about when you go to take the picture, like, what is it about you that makes you authentic? Because depending on the field that you're in, this picture might be different. This might not be a picture of you in a suit jacket. If that isn't authentic for you, and that isn't something that you would wear, or that isn't something that is how the people in your industry dress, then don't conform to something where someone says, for this photo you need to be professional and in a suit jacket. That's really not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is have a great photo that's well taken, that represents you as your authentic self, but also dress like you would if you were going to work or maybe a client. So I thought I would spend some time here and do some interactive stuff and really talk about ways to capture a good picture using a cell phone. And so a couple of things to start with, and you'll see this gentleman here in my first screen, and I put a little red X on him. And so this isn't bad, but there are a couple of things about this photo that I would like to use some tips to try and help correct. And the first thing is that you want to wear something that's like what you would wear to work. Okay, make sure that your clothing is wrinkle free. Make sure that it's appropriately positioned. If you have a collar with your hair, make sure that it's not coming down and coming across the midline of your body. It can be behind the shoulder or in front, but just make sure it's not in the middle. Pay attention to things like glasses, glare, and things like that. I would also say wear something that's complementary and that you're comfortable in, but avoid busy or patterned tops, especially. You want to wear something that contrasts with the background that you're going to be shooting against. And so it's really important. And there's an example down here in the bottom part of the presentation, and you can see what a difference the background makes in this particular photo when you have a dark jacket against a dark background, and then the same dark jacket against the light background. And you can see what a difference paying attention to the contrast between yourself, your clothing, and the background makes when you're shooting. So really pay attention to those things when you go to take the picture. The other thing is that you want to make sure that, and I have to scroll down here. All right. So you want to make sure you're the only one in the photo. You want to use natural light, or you want to use a magical ring light. And I will show you the difference and why you need to use a ring light. So ring lights are the greatest invention ever. I highly recommend that you get one for professional use and for use when you're using anything where you're online. But for this particular instance, I think that's really important. because the ring light that I have in particular, you can change the temperature, you can change the intensity of the light. And so I know a lot of photographers will say, sunlight is best, but a ring light solves the problem of if you're a night owl and you don't have access to sunlight when you want to take that picture. So, I recommend definitely getting a ring light. As I mentioned, don't use filters. Use a high resolution image directly from the source. And if you're using an iPhone, turn off the live photo feature and turn it into the portrait mode. I also recommend turning the camera upside down when you take this photo, and also hand it to a friend to take this photo. As you can see here in this first photo with the red X, you can tell that the individual is taking that photo themselves, and it causes the shirt to kind of crinkle funny on the shoulder and not be as presentable as possible. So always use the forward-facing camera too. All right. So also stand in front of a neutral background. Keep in mind that most of portraits are going to be from the hips or the waist up. The focus should really be on your face and your eyes. You really want to, when you take the photo, you don't want to be able to see shadows around the neck, the bottom of the face, or around or on the back of the background that you're shooting on. And so turning the camera upside down is one of the ways that you can avoid shadows like this. When you pose, like in the second photo, you want to stand or sit with your back straight and with your shoulders as relaxed and natural as possible. And you want to turn one shoulder slightly, ever so slightly towards the camera, and then you want to lean in ever so slightly. And what this does is it helps the camera see you as not a flat image or a flat item, but as something with dimension. This gives you a little bit more shadows and a little bit more the play of light on your face, which makes you appear, as you can see the difference between this first photo and this second photo. You really don't want to have those harsh shadows that create kind of some distance between the face and the neck, but it's just a very clear image. By changing your body, creating those angles and moving into those positions, you really give the camera a much better product essentially to work with. And I do want to give one tip here. It's not on the slide, but if you are ever in a group situation, do not crouch, never crouch, ever. We always take our space, always stand as tall as you are. But also follow the same tips. Turn with one shoulder slightly towards the camera, not dramatically, but very slightly towards the camera. Put your weight on your back hip and then lean forward just a little bit and drop your face just a tiny little bit so that you don't have the shadows around the face. Also, try not to tilt your head to one side or the other. You obviously can see down here in the bottom. I put these on here to show you, like, your affect and your expression are also very important. And so as you were taking these professional photos with your friend, try these different facial expressions as well. Try one neutral, try one with a soft smile, and try one with a big smile. There are some professions where this big smile is not appropriate. And so pick the one that's most like you as a person and feels the most natural, but also pick the one that's going to represent you well in whatever profession that you take. Tilting the head can sometimes seem a little, make the picture seem a little irrelevant. And so just play around with that and find the place where you have the most comfort. So that was a lot. That was a lot about that topic, but I'm very passionate about it. This is something that I think a lot of us miss, and I can tell you from my preparation phase for this particular presentation, it was actually difficult to find photos that were great and that really were good at this. So if you can nail this, you will immediately set yourself apart as being somebody unique and who's somebody who has put time into this. All right, and I'm going to encourage you to take a lot of time at this step as well. And at this step, I really encourage you to brainstorm with your family and friends, and you are going to create what I call the universal identity. Now, I don't know if I made that up or not. I couldn't find it anywhere when I was looking for it, but it's something that makes sense to me. And it's something that I know as a brand is really, really important. And that is that you think of yourself as having one username, handle, identity that you would use on all your social platforms, that you would use as the username part of your email address. And for the best reason, it's easy for you to remember. And if you're talking to a colleague, you can say, I'm always at WVU Cancer on any social platform. It's super easy to do that. But as time goes on, it just becomes increasingly more difficult to keep track of all these different usernames. And so for your own sanity, I highly recommend that you really try to brainstorm and keep this as simple as possible. Also keep in mind that these handles can make or break your impression. Part of that initial impression is your handle. And so as a brand or an individual, you do need to put some time and effort into selecting the best one for you. Because it's something that's going to follow you along. And it makes you be more unique and recognizable and authentic. So one caveat, Twitter handles are editable. So if you have made the mistake of creating one that is not following some of these rules, and it is something that you want to change, they are editable. I would, however, caution you to not edit them more than once or twice in your life. And the reason for that is that once you have a following and once you have data associated with that handle, when you change it, the algorithms are going to push it clear to the bottom. It's going to be just like a new user account, and you're going to have to rebuild those connections and networks. All right, so here's just a couple of things to remember about selecting the handle. No spaces or numbers. Make sure it's something that's easy to remember and unique to you. 15 characters or less, that's a Twitter rule, but that's also a good rule of thumb. Because the longer they get, the harder they are to remember. Make sure it's something it's relevant, and then before you decide on it, go out onto the platforms that you think you're going to use it on and make sure it's available, because this may change your eventual profile. All right, so we've got our handle. We're looking forward to completing our profile with an eye-catching bio. We're setting up our profile picture. We're using that cover picture. And then you've optimized your profile. What do we do next? And so then we move into starting to grab the attention of people outside of ourselves that would be able to create our network and start our following. And so I want to talk about two things here. The first is that once you start building this profile, it's really important to understand the dynamics of how content on that platform lives. So Twitter, for example, is a very fleeting platform, very, very fleeting. In order to be initially noticed by people, you are going to have to be consistent about how often you post, and the depth of the content that you post needs to have a relevancy for those people. The average tweet, the lifespan of that is only about 18 minutes. So if you wish to gain traction on those platforms in the beginning, you need to be really, really committed to not just creating the profile, but then also having a plan for what content is going to come next and what's the schedule that you are going to share that on. LinkedIn, on the other hand, once you post it there, it will stay there forever. So you can't go there and post it and then forget it. Okay. You need to also have a plan once you've created these things to go back and edit, curate, add to, and expand on all the content that you create on these platforms. And I would recommend setting in your calendar the day that you set the profiles up, set a calendar reminder 1 year from now to go and review those profiles, review that content. At the very minimum. I mean, that's still going to be pretty minimal, but at the very minimum, you do need to do that. So as you're setting these things up, also be thinking about the kinds of things that you will be posting and the frequency that you will be posting as you go along, because those things matter as well. When I previewed this presentation with my nieces, one of the things that they said about this particular step was, is they said, well, this is almost as important as naming your infant, you know, and do you have to spend this much time really doing this? And I think they're right. I do think they're right. I think this is something that is really worth spending the time to do, and your profile and handle names will follow you just like your given name. Dannell mentioned this morning that scientific journals are also asking her for it when she's submitting her papers. They're asking for not only Twitter handles, but video abstracts. Who knew? And then one other thing I wanted to talk about was your ORC ID. And so your ORC ID, if you're a publishing scientist, is a very important thing. Before you leave the university, you should set this up. This is a universal ID, similar to what I'm talking about, but this one will allow you to curate and manage all of your publications and all of your important work that's separate from your institution. All right. So what does it look like when you've done all of these things? I've tried to pull an example of somebody who's doing this really well. And so I wanted to point out a couple of things here. Read Write is an online techie blog journal that I follow on Twitter. If you're a techie journal kind of person who's interested in data and AI and social media, I recommend you follow them. But I wanted to point out their Twitter profile here. They've really used the entire area. They've used all the tools that are available in the profile to really tell a story about themselves and their brand. They have a great profile billboard picture that kind of shows some of the different topics that they're interested in. They do use a logo, but they're not a person, they're a brand. And then they've used both the Twitter title and the Twitter handle here so that you can see. And I wanted to point this out because this is one of the things that's kind of confusing. On Twitter, you have both a title and a handle, and those two things don't have to be the same. Most of the ones I see, people do them as the same thing. But in this case, Read Write has used the title to do their brand name, and then they've used a shorter handle. And so this is something that you can use as, as a tactic. If you start looking and find out that the Twitter handle that you want to use is not available. Use all of these tools effectively and connect them together to start to paint the picture and tell the story of yourself. And that brings that to a lot. That was a lot. But hopefully from that section, I hope that you will remember that you can tap into campus and personal connections before you leave campus, and that those are really strong resources for you. That it's really, 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 really important to take the time to build your social profiles and really think about and be deliberate about this step of the process at this point in time. And then the other thing, and I didn't really hit on it a whole lot, but I hope that you heard me say, ask for help, whether it's developing your profile picture or whether it's reviewing the content and the other things that you are creating. And definitely get your friends to help you brainstorm about that handle. They know you better than you do sometimes. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about is maybe not something that's really relevant right now, but I really wanted to put this into your mind because being able to leverage social media for your professional goals is so important. And I know that it's probably hard to think about right now, but if you fast forward 3 years, and that will happen, then these tips will really be helpful at that stage of the game. So I'm really going to talk about, and I'm going to put on my institutional marketing and communications hat here for just a second. So tips for this is, the first thing is that you can't fix it and forget it. You can't write it and forget it. Okay. And that goes for your LinkedIn content, that goes for your Twitter content, that goes for anything that you put out into the world. You really need to have a content strategy or a plan about the kinds of things that you will post, and be diligent about doing it. So promoting your research also shouldn't be the last step. You should really consider it and plan for it in the first step. So here are some tips that I would give you for how that would look. When you're thinking about promoting and publishing, really think about getting a great title. I feel like this is a step that a lot of my colleagues miss. And I use a tool called Elicit AI. They have a couple of cool tools. They have one that's called TLDR, which means too long didn't read it, which will help you write and make abstracts a little bit smaller. They have another tool called Refocus, which will help you if you have a particular abstract to really pull out keywords and summarize it and things like that. I kind of think about AI in this instance as being, because everybody's talking about ChatGPT, this like it's everything. So I kind of think about ChatGPT as being like the Walmart of AI. And then I like Illicit AI as, if you think about it, like more like a beach shop that only handles towels and sandals. And so I would encourage you to get used to using AI and using tools like Illicit to try and help you with some of these steps. So use Illicit AI or your friends to help you come up with a great title. Use some of those tools to summarize and create understandable abstracts. You also want to make sure you're following the journals and co-authors. That's another great way to build your network. Anybody that's published any of the journals that are publishing your work, any of the people that have worked on the work, that's another way to build your network. And so also use threads in Twitter. That's another way that you can do this. But I really want to encourage you to use your tools and networks so that you can write things that are understandable. Not just the ones, not just for the folks that you're working with in your network, but also a usable summary that you could help maybe a non-scientist to understand your project or what it is you've discovered. Involve your institutional marketing departments here. Every time you communicate with them, share your Twitter handle with them so they don't have to go in and look it up. Put your resume, put your handle on your resume, put your handle on all the things that you use. And why would you want to do that? That's really important. So one of the things about doing work in research in particular is that you do have to promote your own work. And Twitter and LinkedIn both have data tools that you can use to track the work that you're doing with your colleagues. As I mentioned, it's a way for you to connect with your colleagues. It's also a way to follow research in your field and become more aware of things that might be going on in developments in your field. It'll also help you find resources, opportunities, grants, meetings, things like that. All right, so Twitter has become increasingly important in science communications. It's a way to obviously share your published work and talk to scientists, but it's also become a great way to talk to the general public about your work as well. And so, it's very useful to build your network and find out what these communities are on Twitter. For us in the science communication world, these are the ones. I had a science Twitter. That one's pretty generic, but some of these others are important. And so using the hashtag and going to these specific communities within Twitter can help you to kind of narrow out some of the noise. And it really brings you into and narrows down that focus so that you're really talking to fellow scientists. It gives you the opportunity to discuss things with them, read the things that they're posting, and really help you to, like I said, calm down some of that noise. One of the things that you want to do in your bio is maybe call out some of these, and so there may be others that are more appropriate for your field, like open science or science art or whatever it is. And so you do want to use Twitter to find the ones that are appropriate for you. And then a sample research or a sample summary statement might be researcher at WVU and call out at WVU working on, call out whatever it is that you're working on, add in some labs that you might be working for or with, and then maybe NIH or NCI or whatever the funding source is in the field that you work for. And then some of these common hashtags so that when somebody else is looking at your profile, this is a way for you to stand out, and this is a way for you to engage yourself in that community in a way that, like I said, really calms down a lot of the chatter. So, one last tip, it's not on the slide, but when you're using Twitter, use lists. use lists, use lists, use lists. I can't stress this enough. You can use lists to organize things for conferences. You can use lists to organize around a certain topic. You can use lists to organize around certain people. But learn how to use lists in Twitter if you haven't done it yet. You will thank me many times later. All right, and getting to the end here. And so one of the things that you really should do is make friends with your institutional marketing team. And the reason that I tell you to do this is they can help you promote your work, and they can help, they can be an advocate for you. One of the things that's really helpful for them is for you to send them publication ready content. And so instead of sending them just a link to a journal and say, hey, I'm published in this journal, and then expecting them to go out and find it and read it and figure it out, send them something that's already in a format that they can post on LinkedIn on behalf. Send them the handles and the hashtags and the community signs that you want to have included so that you can connect that back to your institution. Help them with Twitter captions, create video or images or infographics so that those things are ready and they can easily share those things on your behalf. And the other thing that's somewhat overlooked, and I say it because I work in a large institution, is really have like internal newsletter content that's like email ready, that can be popped into newsletters, can be popped into institutional kinds of conversations and communications. Because that will help your marketer, but that will also help you. That's going to help feed that collaboration and promotion. I would also say always include your Twitter handle when you send that as well, so that your marketer doesn't have to look that up. And I would also encourage you to use it on your resume and really in any communications that you have. Once you have a robust profile, just make that part of your identity. I had an asterisk on the previous slide that said, in case you had a little nervousness about creating videos or infographics, your institutional team can help you with these things. And so, I would encourage you to ask them for help. And this is their strong suit. And so you have the science as a strong suit, and they have this as their strong suit. So really work with them to make everything better. You don't have to necessarily be good at all this stuff, but it is good to know who the people are at your institution who are good at this stuff so that you can get help. So make sure that you are asking for help for those kinds of things. I did want to share a little quick video, a research video. I will not share all 11 minutes, but I did want to show you an example of what this might look like when you collaborate with your institution.
First author paper of mine published in Psychological Science. We focused on one of the very first questions I wanted to answer when I started my PhD. Does grief symptom severity impact our immune response to stress? And the short answer, based on our findings, is yes. We found the bereaved spouses experiencing high grief symptoms had a 19% larger increase in inflammation in the 2 hours following an acute stressor compared to bereaved spouses experiencing low grief symptoms. In this short video, I'll discuss our findings and take you through our experimental methods. We'll also get to hear from my PhD advisor, Dr. Chris Fagundes, on the history of.
So as you can see, working with your institutional marketing department can really elevate and amplify your science, and it's really impactful and powerful to be able to do these kinds of things. So you don't have to be the one that's good at it, but make sure that you have curated the people into your life that are, so that they can help you do these kinds of things. All right. And the key takeaways for this fourth section. So don't fix it and forget it. Don't just do it and think that it's going to last there forever. Make sure that updating your social presence is part of your ongoing activities, and that you have a plan for what content you're going to post. Think about using technology, things like AI, things like videos, infographics, other ways to show and demonstrate your expertise. And keep in mind that you are your best advocate and marketing source. And so if you help your institutional team to promote your work, you are going to be so much further ahead, and they are going to be able to help you so much more.
Okay, so I know that was a lot, and thank you, Lori, for all of that information. It's a lot, and that's why we tried to break it out into those key takeaways. And this, we just wanted to end with, what can you do this week? What can you do this month? And what can you do over the next 3 months to put this into motion? First, let's start basic. This week, start your social media audit. Use those pointers I talked about earlier in the workshop, and start thinking about looking at your professional and personal social media accounts. Get your friend and start thinking about taking that professional profile picture. Also, as Lori mentioned, it's super important to have a professional email address. Sign up for that and have that in your back pocket this week. These are all things that you can just do this week and check off your list. This month, set up your professional Twitter and LinkedIn accounts. Get those going, start building out that content. Look at people who are relevant to your professional social media accounts and start following them. And then, as Lori highlighted, really explore your alumni and campus resources to start making those connections that are going to be beneficial once you've graduated. And long-term, thinking the next 3 months, what could you do? Start engaging on these social platforms, these professional social platforms. Plan and post professional content. Start building that professional presence, that profile that HR hiring managers and professional folks in your field look for. And just quickly to say, this workshop has been developed with the Chats Lab, and we do original research to foster health in Appalachia and beyond, but also fostering the adoption of evidence-based science through these dissemination efforts. So this is right in our wheelhouse and what we love to do to work with folks to help get their research and their science out into the field. And thank you so much for all of your time. We're happy to answer questions, or you can email us at our email addresses on the screen there. And we also ask that you use your phone and use that QR code there to complete the evaluation of this workshop.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boatman and Lori. Students, please, before you go, I'm sure they will be willing to answer your questions, but we also would like you to complete the survey. The survey is not very long. If you would take just a minute right now to complete the survey. Winda, our GA, has put the QR code and the link in chat, as well as you're seeing it on the screen right now. So please take a moment to complete it. And feel free to let us know, let OGO know about what kind of training you would like to see that OGO provides more in terms of professional development.
I have a question. So I guess that, sorry, especially Twitter, I think now we have to separate between the personal and professional one, and have to be very careful what to follow or tweet back on Twitter, because that's, I mean, if they're checking our profile, I think it's a little bit, we have to be very careful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And out of all of the social media platforms, Twitter is the only one that if you Google, you can find tweets. So it's one of the only platforms that allows the content from the platform to be Googleable, searchable. So that is definitely a concern. And the recommendation would be that you would have two. You have privacy settings on Twitter. And so, within that network of personal, colleagues and things like that, you would want to use the privacy settings to allow only people within that network and have a little bit more control over the execution of your content. But if someone knows that username and they Google it, it's public. It's public information. So that's something important. That's something I don't know that a lot of people realize. That when one of the things that when you do that incognito window, that you may find is that you'll find Google, you'll find Twitter, you'll find Twitter posts. So to do an incognito window, you just type in Chrome, incognito, not the band. And we're going to open an incognito window. And then you might just search for yourself. I'm going to search for my colleague that I know is very active on Twitter just to see if it works. Yeah, there she is. So that I think that's why we spent a lot of time really talking about that and really putting that forward as an important thing. Did you have questions specifically about that? Like, did that answer your question?
There's a question in the chat. Can you see that?
Yes. It was asking if there was a specific department that did the social media audit. And I think it just depends on the organization. Some say it's the hiring manager. So that would be the actual department where you would be working. Others said it was the HR department when they're doing their initial screen. So I think it varies by organization.
A student also asked me directly about whether OGO provides the opportunity for them to take the free portrait. Yes, we do, especially during Graduate Student Appreciation Week in the spring. So please make sure you read out those news and sign up for the opportunity to take the free portraits. Okay, Demi said in WVU, who can audit my profile?
Are you asking who can, or are you asking for help?
Yeah, I'm asking for help. I'm sorry. There are nurses there. That's the reason I was chatting. Yeah, because I'm not sure if Career Services does that, but I know they do with resumes.
Yeah.
So I'm asking who can
I
help.
think it would be worth asking someone in
Yep.
Career Services to look. I don't know that it's something that they do right, like right off the bat, but you could certainly ask. And I would encourage you to have your colleagues and your peers in school to do so as well. Maybe have a family member do that as well, just to get a variety of opinions. My Aunt Rita is great at these kinds of things, and I always make sure anything I write she has a look at, because she always finds things that nobody on the professional team thought of. So really, leverage your networks and your resources for your peers.
Any other questions? All right, students, thank you so much for being here. And our presenters, once again, thank you for your time and your expertise. This has been very helpful.
Great. If anybody has questions, feel